People have had enough. And it's true that it was sparked by the issue of compulsory hijab against women, but it has now become much, much bigger and much more profound.
And anti-government protests continue to rage in Iran as the country's supreme leader blames the US and Israel for the unrest. In his first public comments on the movement, the protest was sparked 2 weeks ago when 22-year-old Maha Amini fell into a coma hours after being detained by morality police in Tehran for allegedly breaking the strict law requiring women to cover their hair with the hijab, and died 3 days later. Let's speak to Shahin Gobadi, member of Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Good evening, Shahin.
Good evening to you, Rick, and to all your listeners.
Very kind of you to join us tonight. So give us an idea, if you can, of the mood in Iran at the moment.
Well, the mood is the mood of defiance. A revolution has begun in Iran. Today marks the 18th day of this nationwide uprising, and it would not stop until this regime is overthrown. You're talking about a nationwide uprising which has, of last night, included 170 cities throughout the country, all 31 provinces. As of last night, according to the information provided by the network of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, which is the main Iranian resistance movement inside the country, at least 400 protesters have been killed. More than 20,000 have been arrested. Yet the protest continues. Last night and yesterday, and actually today, we saw protests in dozens of universities throughout Iran. And very tellingly, even some high schools and schools have joined, in addition, people from other walks of life. So it's a nationwide movement which clearly wants the regime to be overthrown. If one listens to the slogans, they're all down with Khamenei, the supreme leader. Then people say down with dictator, and we don't want the Shah, which is the former dictator, nor the supreme leader, which is the current dictator, down with the oppressor. So Iran has changed, and it is not going to go back. We are talking about a very different Iran in which women play a very, very pivotal role in this uprising, and they are very determined to bring an end to this regime and establish a democratic republic in Iran, which comes back to the international community as a good country.
If this is a pivotal moment in Iran's history, which it looks like it may be, how are the authorities, how are they responding to the protests every night?
Well, the only response that the authorities have shown is, further crackdown. But one thing is very telling. This time, the people are not passive. Obviously, the regime has used very, very heavy crackdown. As I said, the numbers speak for themselves. 400 protesters, and some of them even teenagers, have been killed ruthlessly. And as I said, at least 20,000 others have been arrested. But still, the protest continues, which shows that people are now this time fighting back. They're resisting, bare hands. But the people's resolve is quite remarkable. And this is very different. And as I said, if one listens to the slogans, you see the unanimity, you see people from all walks of life, from all age groups, all over the country. So I think it's about time for the international community, including the UK government, to speak up in defense of the Iranian people and specifically underscore their right to resist, their right to defend themselves, and their right to bring about a regime change by themselves, for themselves. And that's exactly what the Iranians want. So I think the international community has a clear responsibility here, is to come on the side of the Iranian people who so heroically have stood up against such a tyranny and express their right to defend and resist and to bring about an end to this tyrannical regime.
If this is the moment that Iran sees this enormous political and religious change, how might it pan out? How might it resolve, Shahin?
Well, I'm sure we are looking forward. As I said, if one listens to the people's slogans in the streets, they are calling specifically, we don't want the Shah nor the repressor, down with the Shah, down with the repressor, being its supreme leader or the Shah. So Iranian people are looking forward. And there is an alternative in the making waiting, and that's the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which its president-elect is Mrs. Maryam Rajavi.
But how would we get there? How would we get there?
There will be more and more demonstrations. And as I said, the momentum at one point will get so big that it overwhelms the regime. And look at what has happened in the past 18 days. As I said, it first began in bigger cities, then smaller cities have joined. Now, in the past few days, university students have joined, and now high school students are joining. And this is the culmination of 40 years of repression of this regime. Its misguided policies, its misogynist attitude toward women, its sponsoring terrorism instead of thinking of the welfare of the Iranian people. So basically, people have had enough. And it's true that this began, it was sparked by the issue of compulsory hijab against women, but it has now become much, much bigger and much more profound.
Yeah.
People are now targeting the regime in its entirety and the supreme leader, and they will not stop until they get there.
Shahin, thank you for taking the time to speak to us tonight. That's Shahin Gobadi, there, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran.